just about any researcher should be able to prototype at this point with the tools that are out there. There's lots of good articles. There's lots of good tools. Spend an afternoon trying to figure it out. It's like you can probably prototype quite a bit more than you think you can. But then with all that agility and with that ability to prototype, we can't drift, because then we'll drift off into this space of novelty and this is really cool. And there's a place for that for sure. I'm not like, don't invent. Invention is very fun. I think more researchers should think of themselves as inventors than they do. I really believe in this duality of discovery and invention. And we're kind of always going back and forth between discovery and invention. But we also need to really stay anchored in those enduring human needs and not drift from them and get into the space again of, like I mentioned earlier, my life is awesome and you made it 1% more awesome.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Awkward Silences. Today we're here with Jess Holbrook. Jess is the head of UX research at Microsoft AI and super qualified to talk about today's topic of what we can learn from traditional UXR about AI research, maybe what we can't, and just to provide a lot of perspective over many years of doing AI research. So, Jess, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, happy to be here.
Like many UX researchers, you have a background in social science. But unlike many UX researchers, you have a lot of experience researching for AI application. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey from sort of psychology and academia to tech and specifically to AI research?
So I got a contracting role in the hardware group at Microsoft. And after a few months there, I got a full-time role in the Windows group at Microsoft. So I was there for about 5 years. And then I went to Amazon for a bit to work on Amazon.com, like literally the site. And then I moved to Google to work on the cloud platform, actually. Cloud was kind of really taking off. This is about 2013. Cloud's taking off. It's kind of the space to be. And there's a engineering director, research director started at Google, and he kind of came and gave this presentation. His name's Blaise Aguirre-Yarkis, and he kind of said, the deep learning revolution is on, AI is happening. And I said, this sounds really cool. I want to go check that out. So I moved over to his team when it was him, 10 engineers, and me, which was at the time, as the AI wave has taken over, it looked like a good call to switch to AI. At the time, it seemed like a very not good call. Everyone who was like, oh, I'm trying to ride the next wave was focused on cloud. That was the place to be. That's where all the teams were growing. That's where all the career opportunities were. And so for me to hop ship seemed pretty weird at the time of like, they don't even have UX, they were like, they don't even have UX over there. Like, what are you, some people were like, what are you doing? But that turned out to be a really great call for me personally, like in my own personal interest and growth. And so one of the things that, how do you get into AI? One of the things that I try to tell people is, I didn't care about AI before I worked over there. I worked with people that got PhDs in AI in their 80s and have been caring about this for decades, right? I didn't care until I got over there. And then I was like, wow, this is super interesting. And reflecting on what has helped form my point of view a lot that I am really appreciate is, at the time, I was the only person in UX for a short time. Like, other people showed up pretty soon after me, but like, I would just go to the research scientist meetings because there weren't other meetings to go to. Like, those were the team meetings, and we would be just reviewing AI papers. Like, we'd just be reviewing papers. And so that really early on just built into me that like, oh, I should just be reading the AI research papers all the time. And like, I've been doing that for, 11 years now, or 12 years now, good Lord. And so that really kind of shifted, that I was always trying to stay very close to the technical understanding. I'm not a computer scientist. I'll never be at that level of depth, but I try to keep close there. Yeah. And then from there, we started to like really approach the UX of AI from the ground up. So we were building products with the new models that started working, the computer vision models, some of the earlier language models. This is way before the large language models. And from there, we started to kind of induct some principles out. So at the time, I was working with another person named Josh Lovejoy a lot, and he and I were working on these like materials around the UX of AI, and we called it human-centered machine learning back then because it wasn't even really talked about as AI a ton. And then we formed this group called PAIR, or People Plus AI Research, with Martin Wattenberg and Fernando Villegas, who are two really exceptional research scientists who kind of really straddle like HCI and AI and data visualization and all these things. Yeah, and then I moved over. While still at Google, we had really framed our efforts as human-centered AI. The momentum and movement around responsible AI really came on strong and kind of like absorbed the human-centered AI efforts. And so everyone was kind of referring to it as responsible AI. So I led the responsible AI UX team there for a little bit. And then I moved over to Meta, and I did the same thing there, running the responsible AI user research team. And then I led the generative AI user research team there. I kind of chose to get back to closer to product. And then I've been at Microsoft for about the last 8 months, leading UX research for their AI division.
Full circle, back where it all began.
Well, the joke, all the big tech companies at the time, I was like, wait, I kind of have to go somewhere else, right? Like I have to collect all the Infinity Stones or the Pokemon, depending on which you prefer. Like I can't go back somewhere.
Yeah, what are you missing? Maybe Apple, Netflix? But yeah, so this is like what, 12, 13 years ago with the first AI centered job, something like that?
I think it was 2014.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, so 11
or so years ago.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that, you were kind of in cloud at the time. That was the hot thing. Everyone wanted jobs in cloud. And you're like, I'll go zag while everyone's zigging. I'm just curious, is there a reason? Or are you up for an adventure? Was there something about AI that you said you kind of got into it once you were there?
Yeah, I mean, a piece of advice for folks who are, I recognize that there's some luck and some privilege in this, but I genuinely have always optimized for interestingness. And am I engaged in the topic? And can I like not stop thinking about the thing I'm working on in a good way, like not in that bad way, in the good way? And yeah, when I started to learn more, and then I realized what my really really early understanding of what was happening with the deep learning revolution and what was about to with the journey we were about to go on, I was like, well, this is by far the most interesting thing. And I've done other zags like that when people do a lot of resulting, right? It's like, oh, it worked out, or we got to do some cool stuff. So you saw that ahead of time. It's like, no, all of it is like, success and failure almost always look exactly alike for, 90% of the journey. And then sometimes it works out. But, also I'm not posting about all the dumb mistakes I made and the stuff that didn't work out or anything like that too.
Jess, we hear a lot about and publish a lot about here at User Interviews the way that AI is being used for research. We wanted to have you on for many reasons, but one of them is that you've been doing research on AI. You mentioned here that you've been inducting some of the principles that make for people-centered, responsible, useful, effective AI. Could you linger a bit on what some of those principles are, some of the ways that researchers who might not be directly working on AI products but might be asked to in the future or are thinking about doing some of that work? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that have come up over the years, and there's a few here. I mean, I think one of the harder parts with research or just being in the AI space right now is this tension you have about staying up to speed on things but not being distracted by everything. So I'll meet with people and they'll say like, how do you stay up on what's going on in AI? And I'm like, I kind of say like, I don't. Like nobody can, like nobody knows it all. If they say they are, like they probably have something to gain from you believing that they are up on everything. And so there's this weird tension you have to have where it's like not getting distracted because there's headlines every week. Every single week, there's some headline that's trying to grab you and say, you need to shift everything you're doing and go in a different direction or blah, blah, blah. But you have to stay very aware. And then over time, you have to kind of build up your intuition and your ability to say, okay, how much does this matter or not? When the large language models are few shot learners paper comes out, that's massive, right? And it's like, we really need to pay attention to this, and like not only for the output of the product, but also for things like the scaling laws that it revealed. And these are things where it's like, oh, this is going to last. This is shifting the trajectory that we're all on. Versus, there's thousands of papers published, a month at least, probably weekly. And so it's kind of parsing through like what matters. I think also one of the things that we've tried to do is like just double down on the really deeply human side of things. And I know that might be a common phrase, but like we've done a lot of research that focuses not just on problems, but on aspirations. So we really like focus on we talk to people about, because at times it can be very hard to talk to people about new AI capabilities. It's like, oh, AI can do this now. What do you think? Like, that's a pretty bad piece of research, right? And so what we try to do is really anchor things, not just in the problems people currently have, but like, what kind of people do they want to be? What do they want their life to be like? What are they trying to accomplish? And that feels like it really kind of pulls things back from like, hey, there's this cool new capability to landing it. Not just in like, oh, you took away this little paper cut I have in my day, that's great. I don't want more paper cuts. But also, are you like actually helping me, learn new topics that I want to deeply understand? Are you helping me with difficult interpersonal relationships that I'm having that I really want to preserve? I'm in financial rut and I don't know how to get out. Like, how do I do that? Trying to do these things that one of the things I've done in our group is I've banned the planning the trip use case. So I'd actually encourage this. I'm gonna make a pitch to your audience. Unless you're at booking.com or some Expedia, ban the we need to plan a trip use case. I don't like it. It's a default that a lot of us go to because most of us have disposable income to go on trips. And the challenge we have is, where should I go? Instead of, we really try to avoid use cases. I call them, it's like use cases where your life is already great and you're trying to make it 1% greater. That's not what we're shooting at. So I think another part of the research fundamentals is, I kind of sometimes call it as like, bring some drama into the use cases. Like, are you alleviating pain and anxiety and hardship for people, or are you making people whose lives are already great 1% greater? I think another thing that we're returning to is also finding like real fans. So AI has a lot of people who use it who are real meh, who are like, yeah, I use it, it's fine or whatever. And so we're really trying to return to these, like, we used to call them power users, but even that's not exactly right, because in AI that can mean a lot of different things. But it's like, who are your fans, and who are like excited, and who would be heartbroken if your product went away, and trying to understand that, and then trying to like expand a lot of that. And then I'll give one more that we think about a lot, which is, with AI, you kind of have the three possible A's of AI. You have augmentation, assistance, and automation. And these are different ways that you can approach what you're building. Are you augmenting human abilities and extending them and giving people, some people call it superpowers, or, I think it's extensions, or compensating for our natural limitations? Are you providing assistance? So somebody's going to kind of like, an agent's going to do this for you, but you're not really expanding your own abilities. Or are we going to automate it away? And all three have their place. A lot of people really like dishwashers. They automate. That's great. A lot of people like assistance with some stuff. They don't really want to do it themselves, but But I try to remind people, I have this one talk where there's just a big slide that says people don't hate work. And so there's a big part of like, watch what you're automating, and especially watch what you're automating. If you're automating something, do not automate away people's identity. Because there's a lot that people tie their identity, their dignity, their worth to in their work. And we're just seeing all these companies and all these things show up, and they're like, hey, don't worry, you don't have to write poems anymore or whatever. And it's like, okay, that's not a pain point I had. And that's a thing I like to do and I enjoy. And so there is really this connection between identity. I'll reinforce the term dignity. That was for a while. I actually was thinking, we kind of talked about human-centered AI at Google a lot, and there was a time where I was like, I think I want to change it to dignity-centered AI. I think that is actually the cornerstone of just about the rest of it, is preserving human and individual dignity and worth, and improving everything around that.
Jess, you alluded to my next question here, which is some of the things that UX researchers should let go of or stop doing related to AI. And you talked about the sort of the wash of information and the ubiquity of like, well, I don't know that, so I don't know what I don't know, and I have to find everything that I don't know. What are some other things that user researchers thinking about AI systems should maybe not jettison completely, but maybe loosen their grip on?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, one is the forecasting. So we all know, we have, we're, on our team, we do, front edge foresight, trying to look, envisioning work, and years ago, it was like, you're talking about something 10 years out, and then it was 5 years out. And now we have these visions that are 2 or 3 years out. And I just said, like, at any point in my career working on AI, if I had guessed what would be relevant 2 to 3 years out, I would have been wildly wrong. And I don't think that that's slowing down. I think that's increasing. And so we're trying to find a new relationship between North Stars and visions and what we're doing now. And I think it's even pulled into this almost like year out thing. And almost you just have more like the need for directionality versus concrete vision. Meaning, if you're like, we are going to really focus on augmentation, and augmentation means we are going to help people accomplish tasks, but they will always be able to do it by themselves, and they will learn when they use our tool. That's a direction that you can kind of head toward without the need for these like waypoints. You generally need some concrete steps. But I think that the reduction in the ability to forecast is pretty big. I think another thing that we're figuring out is, because this space is evolving so rapidly, you need the matching of high agility and enduring insights. And what I mean by that is there's so much going on, there's so much movement. You have to be quite agile. You have to be able to do research quickly. You have to be able to pivot. I'm seeing research teams become more malleable again, where like we went through a phase where you kind of have like this deep expertise in something, and now people are just moving more often. And so I think the more you lean into that, the better of like gaining this more like generalist ability. We're seeing more and more of our team there, and we're finding the right balance between the generalists and the specialists. But in this space, action is information, and creating a prototype, which is, of course, is like almost is trivial at this point, and learning about a new experience is sometimes the most strategic thing you can do, because the space is so quickly evolved. There are no patterns to match that you can go to. That actually leads me to another one is, just about any researcher should be able to prototype at this point with the tools that are out there. There's lots of good articles. There's lots of good tools. Spend an afternoon trying to figure it out. It's like, you can probably prototype quite a bit more than you think you can. But then with all that agility and with that ability to prototype, we can't drift, because then we'll drift off into this space of novelty. And this is really cool. And there's a place for that for sure. I'm not like, don't invent. Invention is very fun. I think more researchers should think of themselves as inventors than they do. I really believe in this duality of discovery and invention, and we're kind of always going back and forth between discovery and invention. But we also need to really stay anchored in those enduring human needs, and not drift from them and get into the space again of, like I mentioned earlier, the like, my life is awesome and you made it 1% more awesome. And so, we're doing a little bit more of that, of these core research assets that are like, these are the enduring needs. These are the hard problems. Sometimes I'll talk about them as like, these existed well before all of our technology, and these are the really hard ones to solve. And so can we stay anchored in those, and these are things about like human accomplishment and human connection and feeling, self-worth.
Yeah, the need for dignity, like you
The
mentioned.
need for dignity, and then
Yeah.
not to be all super serious about it. It's like we
Right.
all want to be
Yeah.
entertained, too.
Mhm.
It's like, but generally we all know when we're looking at, as my girls call it, brain rot, versus
Mm.
something where we're like, oh, I'm becoming a better version of myself by watching this.
Right. I bet that psychology background is coming to use with that quite a bit.
It is interesting how much it becomes more and less more like it comes in these waves of
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
prominence in the work, I feel like.
Yeah. You mentioned that prototyping is so accessible now that researchers can and should be doing it as part of their work. Are you using Figma or using other tools? Or there next gen kind of AI tools that you're using there? Or?
Yeah, I mean, this is another part of like, if you're in AI, I try to push myself, but I'm trying to push deeper and deeper into all the tools and using a lot of different tools, on a daily basis. So, not to like pitch my my current product, but I do use Copilot for this. Experimenting with different tools like Cursor or Warp, that actually allow, pretty rapid code development. And then Figma for designing.
Just
Yeah.
you mentioned the generalist,
Oh,
specialist.
I'll actually say one more.
Please.
A really cool one that I've enjoyed a lot lately is Recraft AI. And so that is for professional. It's image generation for professional designers or graphic designers. And I love, it's this great marriage of generation and control. So I was able to create, a set. We had like a team on site, and I was able to create like this great set of assets that were very unique to the mood I was trying to invoke with the team. And it didn't take me long at all to do it, but I had the control I needed to get it exactly the way I want.
Yeah, it does. A lot of the articles for user researchers are like, frame your prompt this way, and a lot of it around the, I'm not sure what I'm going to get, the iterative nature of that. I want to linger for a second on your team, because you said at the start of your career it was you and 10 engineers, and then you were talking about specialists and generalists. What is the ideal team structure for you? Do you have folks embedded in tech stacks? How are you, granted, I know you're speaking about your team, but you've built teams at several different companies. I would argue successfully. Have you found an approach that you like? It sounds like you need to be close to the technical experts. How are you organizing user research with your stakeholders?
Put together some teams I'm really, really proud of, made of some pretty exceptional people at a couple. I don't think I screwed them up too bad. I think there've been some really great crews in there. This, I'll actually go just one step before your question, which is kind of like, who do you bring on to those teams? And so one is, I don't require that people have had AI experience for every team. You want a mix of people that have had really deep AI experience and people that haven't, to have that mix of views for sure. It's also kind of interesting is now everybody has AI experience. So we've had to actually kind of treat it like, have you worked on it before, like the ChatGPT moment or not? When I was at Meta and I was leading the generative AI team, I'd say, oh, why do you want to work on our team? And they're like, oh, I'm just really excited. I want to work on generative AI. And my kind of joke was like, oh, don't worry, you will. Like, it doesn't matter where you are in the company, like you will. It's just, you want to do the particular thing we're doing over here. And so there's that. And then the second part is, I really try to build teams as much as possible with people with a point of view. And by that, I mean, do they have a strong point of view on something? I don't have to agree with it at all, but do they come to a point of view and will they advocate for a point of view? Because I think that that's something that's very, very important with researchers. And, I'm not looking for kind of people that are generally competent, but don't bring a point of view to the situation. We always try to embed as many people as possible. So a lot of times we've always reported in functionally, but then people are embedded into the products. I tend to even do that earlier than other people do. So some people try to do a service model where you're kind of like moving people around later. I try to embed earlier and create priority and create inconvenience if there needs to be. So we have to have priorities. I really try to avoid peanut buttering people around. Nobody's happy when you do that. And it's kind of that thing of like you're avoiding a few tough conversations and you're signing yourself up for like a year or two of pain. And so we did that. We did that on the current team. When I joined, we didn't have the numbers that we had. We had a great crew, but we didn't have the number of people that we needed. And so I said, hey, I'm going to move these people over here. These things are going to be unfunded. Do we all agree on the priority? And there were some tough conversations, but when you frame it in terms of, we all agree that these are the most important things though, right? And everyone goes, yeah. And you go, okay, well, that's where I'm going to put my people. And that's no different than if I was a PM or an eng lead. Like, if I try to reverse it, I was like, let's imagine we only have a few PMs for the whole org. Would you try to have them have like total span of control of everything? Or would you try to focus them on the most important things? And it's kind of like, you'd obviously do the latter. And then within each team, we have, people will be embedded. It depends on the level. We're trying to find the right level in the way that we're organized that allows people flexibility on what they work on, but also to build domain expertise. So it's kind of like you're moving, the thing I mentioned earlier about the generalists moving around, you're more moving around within kind of a domain. And so we might have a group that's like really focused on, say, like growth and monetization or something like that. And it might be a small team, but we would then have a check-in regularly and say, well, nobody's like going to do anything outside of this kind of growth and monetization space, but what you're doing within there might change pretty rapidly. And then we also have a few like centralized specialty roles, like more quantitative focused UXRs, but we also have people that have super strong quant skills embedded as well.
Are the specialties you need in researching for AI? I think the cough was contagious. Are they different than what you might find in a different context? Is it really that interest and knowledge of AI that is the important thing versus, the methods and the research specialties?
It's been one of the more fun things is that you run into not just research specialties, but so for each person, we're either weighing, do they have specialty in AI? Do they have specialty at the intersection of AI and something else? Or do they have a specialty outside of AI, but we really need an AI? And so what I'll say is like, there are some people on our team that have been working on AI for years, and they have a deep expertise, and especially at Microsoft. Like they just know how it's shown up in our products. They have the history. They're really, really knowledgeable in that way. Then we brought on people who say have had a lot of experience with especially generative AI in like Gen Z use cases. And so we'll say, oh, okay, we really want to like build that up. Or maybe they have like experience really focusing on like co-creation methods. And so we go, okay, we want to bring that into our team. And then kind of mentioning the growth part before too, we might say, oh, this person has done really amazing work working with startups and helping them grow from their first few customers to like, their first wave of people. And so we go, they don't know a ton about AI, but we're gonna level them up and teach them. And then even right now, I'm actually really lucky. We have design and video producers on our team who are working super hard to actually create these resources so the whole team can be closer to users and customers all the time. So like really kind of rethinking how we use like just like artifacts like user videos, and how do we make data like way more accessible to the team, and how can everyone on the team, regardless of your role, feel like at any moment you could get customer contact or watch a customer video or connect, and so we're invested there. And then in previous projects I've worked on, we've brought on specialists to help us really understand I guess, like kind of the use cases and the artistry of things. So when I was at Google, we worked on a project called Google Clips, and it was a AI powered camera. And we had 3 different photographers and filmographers on our team. And so they would work with us, the UX team and the research scientists, to like explain what makes good photographs and what makes a good collection of photographs, and how you tell narrative and how you don't change perspective too dramatically between images unless that's your goal. And so there's a lot of like learning from communities like that that we're trying to do.
Not the paradox, but the interesting of AI feels so, I don't know, modern and futuristic, but yet it's really bringing back those subject matter experts, right? Whether it be photography or the research methods, is still pretty applicable there.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important parts is that we do this with respect for those people and their knowledge. And I do think that there's, the right and wrong ways to do this. And, maybe to shout out another group is like Runway does this really well. Runway is, to call them a video generation company would be disrespectful. I think, they would probably describe themselves as creating a new camera. But they do this really well. They work with the filmmaking community, and they hold, film festivals, and they are deeply engaged and respectful, and they love the craft of the thing. And they're trying to build better tools for those people. And that's a lovely way to be.
Jess, we've talked a bit about time here. Even before we started recording, we were joking about time. What has changed the most in even your decade plus? As you've alluded to, a lot has changed. What has changed the most in researching AI?
Yeah, man, there's a few things. I mean, in the 2014 era, it was the, oh my God, it works. Like, like what? This can't actually, what? It's working. I mean, not to rehash all the details, but when you start to do the supervised learning and learning entities from unstructured data, and you have these great presentations like the unreasonable effectiveness of data, and you're just like, there's this kind of this moment of like, oh my God, it's gonna work. Like, I can't believe this is gonna work. And then and so we got so excited, and we were doing all these things, and then you learn the reality of it, right? The precision and recall trade-offs, accuracy challenges, all this. And then it goes into this crazy hype cycle that we kind of keep going in. Like, we kind of hyped up, and I thought we were kind of plateauing, and then like ChatGPT comes out and it's like, oh, here we go. And there's all these hype cycles. And so that then distorts a lot of people's grounding in like what the reality of the experience is, what it's actually capable of, both for end users and just for people trying to deploy the apps or the solutions. Then we have really the rise of responsible AI and people sounding the alarm bells and saying, hey. Like, I remember I was at the first workshop that I'm aware of on machine learning fairness, while we were at Google, and like we, kind of got together for a day, and, I think I was pretty naive. I think some of us were like, okay, cool. Well, we'll solve the fairness issues like next quarter, and then we'll be done and we'll move on. And, it's obviously way more deeply challenging than that. And then I think from there, though, everyone's evolved from this. We want to try to predict every possible potential risk we can before launching, to there will be trade-offs. How do we understand and mitigate as many potential risks as we can beforehand, but then weigh those against the potential trade-offs? And one of the challenges with AI is a lot of times the potential risks are just bigger than the potential rewards. And that's a bad trade. Like, why would you do that? But I've seen a lot of the industry really move to these trade-off mentalities. And then ever since, ChatGPT broke us out of stasis. Like, while things were moving fast and a lot was happening, and, we had amazing breakthroughs like AlphaGo, and you have products that were using AI that were wildly successful, like, Meta's recommendation systems or Google Photos or whatever it might be. ChatGPT just like broke us out of stasis, and everyone has just been in a sprint to see like who can get to the platform shift first ever since then. A second thing is, I kind of mentioned earlier, is everyone's an AI researcher now. And I always say it's kind of funny. It's kind of like it's like having a favorite band and then it gets really popular, because there's part of you that's like, yeah, that's awesome, I love it, and there's part of you that's kind of like, oh
it's
man,
over.
yeah, well, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's part of you that's like, oh, it was so fun when it was kind of smaller, and like whatever. I'm a latecomer for a lot of people, so a lot of people would be like, might say, oh, it's a lot more fun before you even got here, Jess. But, and then, another, the other point I made is like, at any point predicting 2 years out, I would have been wrong, dead wrong. And then I think the last point I'll make is, I'm still surprised. I don't think user researchers and UX more broadly has embraced the tools as much as I thought we would have by now. And some of them it's because they're not delivering value, but some of it's I don't know. Are we too hesitant? Should we actually be incorporating AI more into our work than we are? I mean, this seems to be a path for just about every profession, and so I think that we'll see a lot of work. Much of our work will be AI augmented, and then I think that there will be even higher premium on like the un-AI augmented work. The people willing to go and do the face-to-face conversations one-on-one with people to get insights that quite literally can't be found any other way.
Awesome. Yeah. Are there particular AI tools or use cases that you would like to be using more, or would like to see researchers use more?
Yeah, I think that, there's an augmentation set that I like a lot. And there's, products out there like, I don't know, like Outside.ai or something like that, that are really like helping you expand and use surveys in really interesting ways. We've always had like big data and thick data, and I think that they're like toying with a third thing there that's kind of qualitative at scale. And I don't think we have like a good name for that or realizing that yet. I love all the efficiency gains that I get, from these tools. Although I've had this thought, and I've shared it with other researchers, and I get a lot of head nods where, like, I don't want an AI to go through my notes and do a thematic analysis, because that's when I figure out what I think. And so if you this gets back to the identity dignity part, I'm like, no, but that's it's funny, as my career has gone on and my title has changed, people will be like, oh, well, we can't ask Jess to code responses. And I'm like, I love coding responses. I love going through verbatims and trying to figure out what's happening there. Like, that's why I do this. I'd go do something else if I didn't want to do that. And so I love that. But when I reflect on like, what is the biggest gain an AI could give me, it's not like it's not the efficiency thing. It's not helping me do what I already do faster. I was thinking about what is the biggest value that a more senior researcher gives a more junior researcher. And that's that they help them ask better questions. And that's what I want AI to do. That's how it could really shift my value and what I'm capable of. Because, when you're a junior researcher and you go to a more senior researcher and you're like, hey, I'm doing this study, I'd love some feedback, so I'm going to kind of like ask this and whatever, sometimes they'll give you feedback on method or they'll something like that. But the really senior folks go, I don't think you want to ask that. I think you want to ask this other thing. And then you have that moment where you're like, oh, you're right. That is actually what I want to ask. And that's what I want from AI. I want it to be the like more senior researcher to me that helps me break me out of my frame or break me out of my the box that I can't see in the question
more
I'm
of
asking.
more of a mentor than an intern, which is what you always hear, right? Like AI is like a bad intern, but you're saying maybe we aren't asking enough out of our AI, right?
Yeah.
Jess, it reminds me of like a dissertation or thesis defense where so much of your prospectus is you're not, you might defend your method, but you're defending your questions. You're defending your question set or maybe your framework, your rationale for pursuing the thing you find interesting or worth investigating.
Yeah, it's of all the things you could have asked, why these things?
Yeah.
Why these questions? Yeah.
Well, I guess future looking, you talked about trade-offs and, weighing upsides and downsides. What are you most nervous or excited about when you think about how this is all going to play out and research's role in it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm terminally optimistic or whatever you want to call it. So I generally think, and again, I know there's a lot going on, but if you look at the data, like most things have gotten better, and I do believe that things will be on a long trajectory. I'm not saying it's going to be a straight line, but I do think things arc towards a better thing or a better way. I'm very optimistic for AI to really help with human augmentation, to give us tools for thought, and for us to really, extend our minds into new places and be deeper thinkers, better thinkers, get more done, ask better questions, and we'll all get a bunch of efficiency gains along the way. I think that's really good. The things I worry about, I think that there's a lot of risks. I think, there's all the usual AI risks. I worry about consolidation. I worry about, these abilities not being spread around and everyone having them. I want there to be lots of startups. When I was at Meta, one of the things I really loved was the open source approach. I think all the companies will have something along those lines, at some point. I think that that's pretty key. But I think like any technology, I mean, my biggest worry is who's going to control it and what are their motivations. And so the best way to build infrastructure against that is through things like open source and accessibility and ways to decentralize that control at all times.
Yeah, and I thought originally you were maybe talking about on the like sort of user employee side too, of not spreading the wealth in terms of who gets to control the future of being the users of agents versus displaced by AI, right? Hopefully that is spread around as well.
Yeah, I am a believer of that, well, this goes back to like old cybernetics things where, we make work robotic and then are shocked when robots take it over. And so this is where things that are overprocessed or broken down into tiny units and that are repeatable and don't use imagination and don't use intuition and don't use discernment and decision making are easily automatable because we made them that way. And so anything we do that to, we should expect to be automated at some point. I do believe our work will shift to something else. And generally it has always been something better. But I do think that there will be a shift in that as some like parts of the job are automated. But I hope more of them are augmented in the ways that we've talked about.
All right, closing down with our rapid fire section. What are a couple of your favorite interview questions?
I wasn't sure actually with this one, so I want to give you three depending on who I'm asking. Okay, so if I'm asking a participant a question, by far the favorite question is, what is your favorite blank that you've ever made, taken, created, etc. So I've been in projects. I mean, it could be like an app somebody made. It could be a photograph somebody took. Ask them about something they're proud about and they light up. They can't wait to show you. And you learn so much about, again, identity. What are they proud about? Why are they proud of this thing that they made? It's going to give you like gold into their identity and their motivations. If I'm talking to interview candidates, like so somebody who wants to join our team, one of my favorites is I ask them, what are you talking to your mentors about right now? And I love the question because it's loaded, because I'm assuming that they are talking, but it's me trying to get at, are you really comfortable knowing, like, are you self-aware, knowing where you need to grow? Have you connected with other people? So do you have the ability to not just be self-aware, but to have the ability to look, not in power to another person, to come to somebody with humility? And are you actively doing it? And so the best responses to that are always, yep, here's this thing I've been working on for a while with these people, but a lot of people don't have anything. And then if I'm talking to like a direct report or somebody who reports to me, it's a simple one, but I ask, what can I do better? And I do not ask, is there anything I can do better? Or is there anything that could be better? Or is there anything we could do better? Because I usually speak in we about the team regardless. But I just say, what can I do better? There's something. I got a list. I'm working on my list, but I got a list. So, what can I do better?
How about resources that you would recommend? You mentioned a few of them. Are there others that stick out, either about AI or human-centered thinking or research generally?
Yeah, I'll give two that are like in the main discourse, and then I'm going to try to push people to a couple others. So in the main discourse, I still believe in the People Plus AI guidebook. We it originally came out in 2019, pretty heavily updated in 2021. I revisit it often, and I think that we got a lot of useful things right that hold. I also really have enjoyed, since being at Microsoft, the Hacks toolkit, which is a similar look at like human-centered AI and approach, and it's very like actionable. There's lots of toolkitty things in there. So those are my two kind of more mainstream ones. Definitely go check those out. The other ones I want to suggest are going to be less about research and more about invention and thinking about what we're doing here. And so I want to push people a little bit. One of those is Matt Webb's blog, Interconnected. Matt is a really, somebody I learn from every time I get the chance to talk to and see. He has a great new company called Acts Not Facts, and he really likes to build to think. And I think more researchers, we default to, I need to read and absorb and everything to think and figure things out. And I think we could probably do a bit more building to think. And so that's one of them. Another one is the work in the blog by Maggie Appleton. So Maggie, again, is a really interesting thinker in the space of design and AI and anthropology and programming and all these things. And the reason I recommend her is, I think her ideas are very thoughtful and original, but also I love how she blends these fields and isn't afraid to. And I think research could do with a little bit more blending, a little bit more embracing of the adjacency and getting our thoughts out in little multimedia ways. And then the last one I'll recommend is a newsletter called The Pessimist's Archive. And it's a great little Substack, and it basically just shows newspapers, articles, or announcements on almost every technology we take for granted today or use happily, all the pessimistic reactions to it when it first came out, and how many of them seem kind of absurd. And that's a little bit of a reminder of there will always be pessimists. I believe you should listen to them. I think you should listen to them and understand, but know that they're not always going to be right, and know that pessimism will always sound smarter than optimism. But that doesn't mean it's that doesn't mean it's right.
I think those are all new ones. So that's great. And we will link all of this in the show notes. Last one, where can folks find you? Are you on LinkedIn or any platforms?
Yeah, I need to be more on. I don't know if I need to be more online.
You don't need to do anything, Jess. You do you.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is the big one. I don't go to X anymore, but I really haven't found another place. I don't really post on Threads or anything else. So yeah, probably LinkedIn. It's probably a good one. Yeah.
We'll link that too. Well, Jess, thank you so much for being with us. I learned a lot. This was a lot of fun, and have a great weekend. It's Friday.
Awesome. Thank you both. I really appreciate it. It was fun. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Jess.